Question. Dear Kim, there is a well-known master who calls or sees himself as an avatar. He's also known as Avatar Adi da Samraj, with quite a lot of followers and communities all over the world. Where I live, we also listen to recordings and watch videos of him. But from the beginning, I have a gut feeling or just a resistance. Like Osho, he has a somewhat extravagant lifestyle, his clothing, living on an island. He hardly mentions God or Jesus, and the focus or energy is a lot about him as a master. Can it also be that a master is starting as a genuine master, but loses his divine protection and goes into a mental or lower identity level of spirituality? Also, the amount of books he wrote, or that is a hunch from me that it becomes a mental movement. Somehow, if I have Jesus in my mind and heart, I have a strong idea that he was not walking around as a guru or have some extravagant lifestyle. But because in the teachings you give on your websites and in the videos, you talk a lot about avatars, and Adi da is clear about that he is an avatar, even a title he uses. Okay, so let me, there's more to the question, but let me just stop here, because what you have to realize is that the way that I use the word avatar is fundamentally different from the way it has been used in the East. There is a certain tradition in Vedic teachings or Hinduism that there can be these avatars that are embodiments of some kind of Hindu deity, like Vishnu, for example. And obviously this Adi da, that is how he uses the word avatar about himself. He claims he is the embodiment of some deity. The way I use the word avatar is the way the Ascended Masters use it. And they are using it deliberately to challenge that old Hindu view of avatars as some very rare exceptions of an ultimate deity. So the way the Masters are using the word avatar is that there are a large number of people in embodiment on Earth today who are avatars, in the sense that we came from what the Masters called natural planets to this Earth, which is an unnatural planet. And I explained this in greater detail in my video called How the World Was Created. So the reason why we are called avatars is we didn't have to karmically embody on Earth. There was no karma we had made that forced us. We voluntarily chose to embody on Earth to help raise the consciousness of Earth and put the Earth on a track that brings it back to being a natural planet and manifesting what Saint Germain calls the Golden Age. So that's fundamentally different. The way Adi da uses the term avatar is different from the way I use it. So if you're familiar with these teachings, the Ascended Masters, you need to familiarize yourself with that. There is a book that talks about this. It's called My Lives with Lucifer, Satan, Hitler, and Jesus. It's a novel, fairly easy to read. It's a story. So that can give you some impression of it. But as I said, it simply refers to this, that we came from a natural planet. And that's explained in my video about how the world was created. And part of the reasons why the Masters are using the word avatar is that you look back at history, right? And what you always have had is this tendency to idolize spiritual teachers, put them up there on a pedestal as being so special. It's like I've talked about in many of my videos, they destroyed Jesus as an example by calling him the only Son of God. And as soon as you have a guru who claims to be or is believed to be the incarnation of some deity, you've done the same there. You put him up on a pedestal. And I'm always, as soon as I hear somebody refer to themselves as this way, that they are have reached some ultimate state of consciousness, they're the incarnation of a deity or incarnation of God, like this title Bhagwan or Bhagawan, I always sense there's something there. And perhaps this is what the person is describing, that you sense. There's just something there. Because, as I've explained in many of my videos, we are moving into the Aquarian age. And the Piscean age was the age, we could say it was the age of gurus that were looked at as being authorities. But in the Aquarian age, we need examples. And many spiritual people who are avatars have embodied at this age to be the examples for others. Because the more people exemplify the spiritual path to a higher state of consciousness, the harder it becomes for people to idolize all of us. You see? So that's why you can actually say that a guru who sets himself up to be worshipped as being very special by his followers is out of touch with the Ascended Masters and the spirituality of the Aquarian age. They are a relic of the Piscean age. Now this Adi da is no longer an embodiment. The person is talking about him as if he's still, but as far as I could see looking him up, he's no longer an embodiment. So, okay, so the person is also asking, can a master start as a genuine master but lose his divine protection and goes into the mental or lower identity level of spirituality? And that is a possibility. I mean, clearly, you can have people who are genuinely growing for a time, and they reach a level of consciousness where they're able to teach others, so they start teaching others. But then, as they gain more and more followers, they can be trapped in this, and it's actually can be very subtle, because it's this, you can even be deceived by your desire to help other people. So you somehow, however this happens, you become a guru who's looked up to, and you attract a lot of followers. And you see that the followers want something from you. And so you want to deliver what they want. And you see that there are people who want to worship a guru. So you are stepping into that role and you are allowing them to put you up on a pedestal, and you start acting the part. It may not have been your intention from the beginning. In some cases it is, but it could be that you simply get deceived into, maybe you believe it yourself that you're special because everybody tells you you're special. Maybe. Or maybe you're just saying, well, what's the harm in playing the role? This is what people need. And so what can happen is that a person can have some genuine connection to the one mind, or maybe even Ascended Masters, without realizing it consciously. And then gradually it shifts, and now it starts tuning into beings in the higher mental realm or the lower identity realm. And these beings can still give the guru some seemingly very advanced teachings. They're being in a mental realm who are so good at using the mental mind and the analytical mind that they can run circles around most people in embodiment. I mean, I've encountered beings like that who much more intellectually sophisticated than I am. I couldn't, with my intellectual mind, counteract their arguments, but I could, with my intuition, sense this is coming from the mental realm and not from the ascended level. And that's why I could avoid going into an argumentation with them, but I realized that if I went into argumentation with them, I couldn't disprove what they were saying. So this can certainly happen to gurus. You know, it's like this: you drink your own Kool-Aid. You begin to believe that you are special because so many people tell you you are special, and it becomes a closed circle. You know, because as I've said before, there is this psychological mechanism. The ego wants ultimate security. And there are some people who believe, and including Christians who idolize Jesus, or Buddhists who idolize the Buddha, they think, if I just follow this special teacher, I'll make it. I don't have to look at my psychology. I don't have to take responsibility for my own growth. So basically we can say, there's a lot of people in the world who are open to the spiritual side of life, but they are not ready to take responsibility for themselves. They are attracted to a guru who tells them, just follow me. I will take you. I will save you. You don't have to take responsibility. Give me the responsibility. And then you get into this vicious circle, because why would people believe that a guru can save them? Well, he has to be special. So the followers want the guru to be as special as possible. And then when the guru sees this, he can get into actually going along with saying, with even believing it. I mean, you read about this Adi da, and he had these awakening experiences. So he probably felt that because of this special experience he had, he could now acknowledge that he was the embodiment of this deity. And it seems like he genuinely believed this. But that's what I'm saying. It can just become the vicious circle, where you begin to believe what your guru, your followers want, and therefore you are willing to now declare that you are really so special. And, it's again this, could you take the followers who believe this and argue with them and convince them that this is not right? I don't think so. It certainly isn't my intention to do it with this video, because I don't expect they'll pay attention to me at all. Why should they see me as an authority when they have the ultimate authority? And I'm not interested in setting myself up as an authority. I'm just saying it becomes this closed circle, and there's no way out of it by reasoning, by arguing. But you can, as the person is describing, you can read the vibration and see something is off, right? So back to the question here. Somehow, if I have Jesus in my mind and heart, I have a strong idea that he was not walking around as a guru or have some extravagant lifestyle. Well, obviously, no. Jesus wasn't having an extravagant lifestyle whatsoever. On the contrary, he was completely modest, didn't have any money, didn't own any property, dressed very simply, ate very simply. He was, as most yogis in the East, completely non-attached to worldly goods. And he demonstrated that. That's why, when a guru finds it necessary to live this extravagant lifestyle, is it really credible that he has reached a high level of consciousnness? I mean, if you are the incarnation of a deity, does a deity have a need to have fancy cars and expensive watches and this and that? How do you become a deity unless you've transcended all material needs? Another thing I read about the Adi da was that he went through a period where he lived in this very kind of extravagant lifestyle, also with sex, and it was like he had to outlive all of these things. And my sense of it always, you can see there are some yogis that say that some people need to outlive their worldly desires in order to overcome them. That's fine. But then are you really advanced in consciousness if you have to do this? Because to me, the higher you go in consciousness, the more, first of all, you overcome attachment to worldly things, but also you become more balanced. So you don't need to outlive an extreme lifestyle. It just doesn't correspond with the claim that you have reached some ultimate level of consciousness or that you are the incarnation of a deity. But anyway, we dealt with the avatar thing. I also know and see that even a false teacher can be helpful on my journey home. Is there a difference between a false teacher that is deceiving people on purpose or a false teacher that is not receiving or receives a limited amount of divine wisdom from the ascended masters? Well, the first thing I would say is that yes, a false teacher, I have other videos where I talk about false teachers, and I'd say it's very tricky to use the terminology false or true teachers, in the sense that it very easily becomes a dualistic value judgment. So what we can say is that many of us, when we make our life plans before we come into embodiment, we deliberately choose to engage in a spiritual movement or with a spiritual guru who is not the highest possible, because we feel we need to have that experience in order to learn a lesson, in order to increase our discernment. And maybe also to help other people who are involved with that teacher or movement, because by us growing above it, we can help others. So certainly. The other thing is that even what you would call a false teacher has a lot of true teachings. They all do. If a person set up a spiritual teaching that was entirely false, he would attract very few people. And you understand that. So let's talk about this. A false teacher that is deceiving people on purpose. Yes, you could say that's a false teacher, because the person is deliberately trying to deceive people. And this ties in with the fallen beings, as I talk about in my video about how the world was created. They want to deceive people. But if a false teacher set up a teaching that was entirely false, he wouldn't attract very many people. And you have to also realize there are fallen beings who want to prevent anyone from reaching a higher level of consciousness, because it becomes a threat to the fallen beings. But who is it they want to prevent? Is it the average person? No. It's the people who are most spiritually mature, who have reached a certain level of spiritual awareness in their past lifetimes. They are the ones the masters want to prevent from manifesting the Christ consciousness. So they are the ones they are seeking to deceive. And we have some sense of discernment. So they're not trying to attract, they can't attract us by an entirely false teaching. They have to have a lot of true ideas, so we are attracted, we recognize the true ideas. And then they mix in a few distorted ideas that takes us into a blind alley. Like, for example, the idea that it's all good and that you shouldn't focus on evil because it gives dark forces power. Right? Now you take that belief, you shouldn't focus on evil, it gives them power. Well, that means you realize there's evil. So if you don't know how to protect yourself from them, how are you going to avoid being affected by them? But anyway, that's just besides the point. So yes, there's beings who are deliberately trying to deceive people, or knowingly trying to deceive people. But those beings, most of them, are in the mental and higher identity, lower identity realm. They're not in embodiment. So you can have teachers who are tuned into those beings. And the person is saying, a false teacher that is not receiving or receives a limited amount of divine wisdom from the Ascended Masters. Well, there are many teachers on earth, and there are even some who talk about Ascended Masters, who are not tuned into the Ascended Master, but they are tuned into these beings in the higher mental, lower identity realm. And there are beings in those realms who claim to be Ascended Masters, who use Ascended Master names, and who give forth some very mentally advanced, complicated, complex, hard to understand teachings. So that is certainly a possibility, that there are a number of gurus who are tuned into this mental lower identity realm. I also know and see. No, can you give more clarity on this topic about false teachers and their traits? On the other hand, are there teachers that are not known on earth by the general public that are the real deal but don't have a huge crowd of followers? So I think I have given some clarity. I also have other videos about false teachers. Right? So they're simply, you could say, there are the teachers who are deliberately trying to deceive people and who know it. But there, in my sense, there's relatively few of those on earth. There are more people who actually believe they are in contact with some higher being, but it's beings in the mental and identity realm. Now again, these people may have teaching that can be helpful for some, but they are just not at the ascended level, so they are not beyond self-interest. And therefore they want something from you, and they get usually energy from people when you follow them uncritically. And they also, as I said, might want to give you some of these beings, as I said, their goal is to prevent you from reaching the higher levels of awareness, what you can call personal Christhood or higher awareness. That's their goal. And so they're very good at giving people the impression that you're doing something spiritual, you're doing something important, and they give you these teachings that seem very advanced because they're difficult to understand. So I met people over the years who were into some of these teachings that are very intellectual, very mental, and they think all they have to do is study these teachings. But it actually keeps them at a certain level that prevents them from reaching the higher potential they have and that they put in their divine plans. So that's why they can take people into a blind alley where it's not that you're not spiritual, it's maybe you're even helping raise the consciousness somehow, but you're just not fulfilling your highest potential that you actually wanted to fulfill in this lifetime. And so it's a camouflage teaching, and there are also those beings who parade as ascended masters, but are not ascended. So they are essentially doing the same thing. There are gurus out there who claim to be channeling ascended masters, organizations who claim to have ascended master teachings, but they are only coming from that higher mental or lower identity level, so they keep people at that level. And I always think that if somebody claims to be an ascended master and they're not ascended, that's deceptive right there. I mean, that's sort of the ultimate deception. And the only way you can deal with that is you learn to read the vibration. And you have an experience of an ascended master consciousness, and then you have a frame of reference. You can tell the difference. I mean, I remember many years ago when I started, I would often read some of these channeled teachings that are out there, and I got to a point where I could read a paragraph. I could say, "Oh, this is mental. This is coming from the mental level," and that's it's not that I'm so special because I could do this. You can do that too. Anybody can learn that. But you have to have a frame of reference from the ascended level in order to evaluate this. And that's a matter of you working with the ascended masters until you get that direct experience. So, are there teachers that are not known on earth by the general public that are the real deal but don't have a huge crowd of followers? Yes, certainly. I mean, I don't know many of them, but there are many. I mean, you take Yogananda's book, Autobiography of a Yogi, and he talks about how there are many of these gurus in India who are not seeking to be known by the public because they have an ashram, but they have a limited number of students that they interact with personally. And they have reached a higher level of consciousness, and they can help their students grow towards a higher level of consciousness. So that's genuine enough, and I'm sure there are many of those, and there are probably some that are very advanced in consciousness, far more advanced than I claim to be, and they are the real deal, and they are doing their genuine work. It's just not their choice or not their role to be known publicly. And many of them have no ambition of writing a book or putting up a website or doing YouTube videos or getting known by people in the West. I'm sure there are also gurus in the West who are not generally known and have no ambition of doing that. It's just not their choice, or it's not part of their divine plan to do this. But what I will say about this is that, it's been my sense for many years that the Eastern Guru model is genuine enough, but the problem with the Eastern Guru model is a guru, no matter how advanced he is, can only have contact with physical direct contact with a certain number of students. And we're moving into the Aquarian age where millions of people are awakening all over the world to the spiritual side of life. All of those people can't find a personal guru. Therefore, you need a new approach, an Aquarian approach to spirituality, where your guru becomes the ascended masters because they have the capacity of consciousness to interact with you, not in a physical way, however. And that's why you need to step up and use the teachings and tools that the ascended masters are giving through sponsored messengers to establish your personal inner contact with the ascended masters so that the masters can be your gurus. And you don't need a human intermediary. You need the human intermediary to help you reach that level where you have your own inner contact, maybe, but beyond that, you can work with the ascended masters. And to me, that's the Aquarian Age model. That's why I'm saying the Eastern Guru model, it will still have a purpose, but it can't be the main form of spirituality in the Aquarian Age, because many more people are open to spirituality.